Well, one of my dear little seniors came up to me early, never turns in anything early, gives me this essay and says, Mrs. McKnight, could you please look this over for me and give me a few tips? It was immediately recognizable as AI. And after reading the entire essay, it was 100% AI generated. And so she's sitting there on pins and needles. So tell me what you think. What can I do to make it better? I said, well, to make it better, I think you should start all over again. And I think you should write it in your own words and your own voice, because this sounds an awful lot like AI. She just kind of rolled her eyes and shrunk about 2 inches as she walked away. And then I thought, this is going to be an interesting year.
Welcome to the BJU Press Teacher Edition podcast, where Christian educators are encouraged and inspired as we bring you interviews, practical ideas, strategies, and answer your questions about teaching in today's culture. And here's your host, Jenny Copeland.
Teacher Edition podcast appears to be a platform dedicated to providing valuable insights, advice, and resources for educators. The website likely hosts a podcast series where teachers share their experiences, strategies, and innovations in teaching. It may cover various topics related to education, classroom management, technology integration, and professional development, aiming to support and inspire educators in their journey. Additionally, the website might offer additional resources such as articles, guides, and links to educational tools to further assist teachers in their roles. Well, it appears we might have an informative summary about our podcast, and that summary comes to you courtesy of AI, and that is our topic today. We have talked AI previously on this podcast, and I'm excited to have another conversation about this because it's what educators of various levels and subjects are facing. It's important to know what it is, as well as its impact on education, both to our students and our teachers. So while we might have a summary of the Teacher Edition podcast, I know that you have a great episode ahead. Welcome back to each of you. I appreciate our listeners, and I'm glad you're tuning in. I hope you've taken time to visit our website, teachereditionpodcast.com. Please share it out as well. Maybe you know someone who isn't a podcast fan. Share the website with him or her. It's a great place to listen to the episodes as well as get more information about the show. I know we are all busy, but hey, summer's a great time to catch up on podcasts and get ideas, so let me encourage you to go back and find those shows you may have missed. And while you're relaxing on vacation, mowing the lawn, doing laundry, whatever it is you find yourself doing, go listen to it. Just do it. I know that you'll be glad that you did. And take time to encourage others to listen as well. Just click the share button and send it out. You can also find us, like us, and share it out through social media. We are Teacher Edition Podcast on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Teacher Edition Pod. And by the way, you can also catch the video of this podcast on our YouTube channel, Teacher Edition Podcast. Okay, let's talk AI. I'm sure I would be hard-pressed to find educators who have not at least heard of AI, not to mention bumped into it in their classrooms, regardless of their efforts to keep it out. There are a lot of voices in AI right now about AI, and I feel it's really important that we as educators know the truth. The truth about AI is no exception. We need to talk about it. Ignoring these types of things doesn't help the situation, us or the student. So today, I've invited Penny McKnight to join me and talk about this topic. Penny is an educator, missionary, wife, mother, and grandmother. She discovered her love for children while volunteering in Sunday school and Good News clubs as a teenager. Determined to never be a school teacher, Penny graduated with a degree in church ministries and ministered for 17 years as a missionary in Jamaica with her husband and their 4 children. So since she's returned to the States, she has been teaching, notice that word, she's been teaching high school English for the past 19 years at Hartford Christian School in Maryland. When she's not teaching or grading papers, and I know for educators that's pretty rare, she does enjoy time with her new grandson, taking walks with her husband, and even reading a good book. Now, if you notice, Penny has a lot of experience in several areas, But never did I mention that she's a computer science professional or a trained IT expert. And I'm really excited about that fact. She's a teacher who's working in the trenches, serving faithfully, and facing head-on the waves of culture and society that we live in, including the breakneck speed of technology advancements. And why I'm excited to have her here is that she decided to dig in and find out what is this all about and how should she best respond in her classroom. So she is right where thousands of Christian school teachers are around the world. And I'm really excited for what we're going to learn today. So I'm excited to talk AI. Penny, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jenny. It's good to be here.
I shared a little bit about your background. Let's take a minute as we get started to have you fill in those details just a little bit more. If you would, share with us briefly how you came to be an educator and bring us up to speed on how you became interested in AI.
Sure. So when I was teaching in Good News Clubs and Sunday school starting at age 12, I loved it. I thoroughly loved the children and being with them. And many people told me, oh, you should go into teaching. Not the least bit interested. Did not want to teach. You know, the old saying, never tell the Lord never. He knows exactly what he has prepared for you. But I actually did go into missions, not teaching. And as a missionary, I worked with children still in Sunday schools, in camps, in Bible clubs. And then my own children were born. All 4 of my children were born in Jamaica, just a whole nother story. But then I had the privilege of homeschooling them until they were in about 10th grade when we moved back to the States. At that time, I actually was working for an accounting firm doing mailings and writing and editing for her, at about which time the principal of Hartford Christian starts calling me saying, hey, I need an English teacher for the spring. My immediate response was no. He called again, no. Kept calling until the Lord just rearranged all the circumstances until finally it's like, okay, we'll give it a try. And 19 years later, I'm still teaching English with all of its new challenges, including AI. All right. So
that's
AI,
so great.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see the way the Lord leads, right? And the way he prepares. So generative AI, ChatGPT, OpenAI, the type of AI that has all the hullabaloo surrounding it, came out 18 months ago. And when it first came out, I was just curious. It looked like a lot of fun to get in there and type in my prompt and ask it questions and have these human-like conversations with a machine and see what answers I could get. Well, one of the things I started to do was to type in some of the prompts that I use for writing assignments in English. So, for example, I would have them do a literary analysis essay on a play. So I would type my prompt into AI, and I was rather horrified to see what great answers I was getting back. Not necessarily great writing, but when you're used to dealing with high school sophomores, it was pretty passable, right? So then, as I kept playing with this and seeing what it could and couldn't do, come around to the fall of 2023, and I was working with my senior class, and they were writing college essays and scholarship essays. The one scholarship essay, the scholarship itself was essay-based, and they were supposed to write, how can one person impact a community? Well, one of my dear little seniors came up to me early, never turns in anything early, gives me this essay and says, Mrs. McKnight, could you please look this over for me and give me a few tips? I'd been playing with it enough for the last 9 months. It was immediately recognizable as AI. And after reading the entire essay, it was 100% AI generated. So she's sitting there on pins and needles. So tell me what you think. What can I do to make it better? I said, well, to make it better, I think you should start all over again. And I think you should write it in your own words and your own voice, because this sounds an awful lot like AI. She just kind of rolled her eyes and shrunk about 2 inches as she walked away. And then I thought, this is going to be an interesting year. So that is how I started looking into AI. And as more and more students tried their little tricks, it escalated in importance. And I kept going back to my administrator. What do you want me to do? How do you want me to handle this? Till finally he looked at me and said, go figure it out, and then tell the rest of us. So thus it began.
Wow. That a sad way to begin, but very realistic way to begin. So I'm confident that all of our listeners are at different levels of exposure to AI. So you were kind of dabbling in it, and then you got thrown in the deep end. Some aren't even dabbling yet. Some have heard of it. Some use it all the time. Some attempt to avoid it like the plague, I'm sure. And others have been thrown into the deep end like you due to classroom situations. So let's back up a little bit. Let's build a foundation so that we're all on the same plane. So AI stands for artificial intelligence, and AI, we know, is not new. It's all around us. AI, works to personalize ads you see when you're online or the stories you see on your social media. It helps us check our emails or predict the next word when we're texting. Other ways, it gets helpful information when we do a simple search. It answers our shouts to Siri and Alexa. So AI redirects and suggests even our routes. When you're on your way home and a route is blocked, it's going to give us a new route. It's not new, but AI's presence continues to grow. And now, of course, like you mentioned, generative AI is taking over the scene, and it's really capturing the spotlight. So generative AI, as the name suggests, is capable of creating something new, like you mentioned right there with that essay, new text, new images. That's where I want to park today on generative AI, because that's what the newest shiny object is that we're facing. So Penny, let's talk first about getting teachers up to speed on a solid knowledge of generative AI. That 5-second explanation I just gave doesn't cut it, let alone all the features and options and uses that are there. How would you introduce AI to teachers who have little exposure to it? Because we know that there are listeners right now listening to this that had very minimal exposure to it. What would you say to them?
Exactly. The way you set it up with the many ways in which we are using AI already is kind of mind-boggling. We take it for granted. It has simply become integrated into society. If you go to YouTube, it suggests other videos you may want to watch. That's AI working in the background. You get a phone call from your credit card company saying, hey, somebody in Hawaii just used your credit card and you are in Maryland. That's AI working for you in the background. But it is this generative creative capability that has created all the hullabaloo in the past 18 months, because the basic way it works is you simply type in words, or now even speak in words, and the generative AI will create basically whatever you ask it to do. So from a student standpoint, that means it can create essays. It can create full out research papers. If you're using the right AI assistant, it can even give you sources that you can then cite in your work, making it look like it was your own authoritative production. It can do your homework for you. I was just reading an article last night that was saying AI can now do just about any homework assignment that you can give it. Varying levels of accuracy, but for a student just spitting out homework and getting it done, it's very quick. It's very easy. So we had an English meeting the other day and we were talking about this very thing. And her opinion was, well, AI can't do my students' homework because I generated these questions myself. They're not available out there anywhere. Doesn't matter, because AI is just pulling out strings of data from this huge database and then organizing it into a brand new answer. So I tried it. I took my set of originally created Pilgrim's Progress questions. All you have to do is either upload it, or you can take a picture or a PDF and drop it into AI and ask it to answer those questions. Within 2 seconds, I had 20 questions, complete sentence answers, and they were all accurate, even down to the biblical allegory and truth that it represented. So it is capable of amazing things just in education. What it can do outside of education is incredible. But I think what we need to remember as teachers, just getting familiar with it, is although it's called artificial intelligence, it's not intelligence. It's math. It's all a series of mathematical algorithms and binary code that is just searching data and then looking for patterns and putting them together in fresh and original ways. intelligence itself is a creation of God. It's a gift of God to mankind. When he created us in his image, he gave mankind intelligence that supersedes anything out there, along with the ability to express emotions, the ability to form actual relationships with other human beings, the ability to form relationships with him, and artificial intelligence tends to get humanized to the point where people treat it as if it were another human being and as if it were actually thinking, when it is not. And so we need, as we're going to use it as a tool or watch to avoid it in our classroom, we need to keep that thought distinct in our mind, because no machine, no matter how smart it seems, can really behave in human ways as truly intelligence. It purely mimics what God has given to us as human beings.
And they are to their friends. They can ask questions, they can get opinions. So yeah, it's tricky. So let's keep drilling down on that, because I want to talk a little bit more about what generative AI can do and how it actually works, because I think it's so important that we understand that. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion's coming from today among Christian educators. Before we can jump to the teaching or banning it or the rules and the guidelines, we have to do the learning. We have to know what it is and what it does. So, Penny, I'm going to let you lead out on this. Let's talk about what generative AI can do and how it works. You've mentioned it a little bit, but any other details you can fill in? What do you have?
Interestingly enough, nobody seems to really know how it works, which sounds like a very strange thing in this computer world. But we have programmers, we have humans who are inputting all of this data and are teaching AI how to work and how to put this information together, but they really don't know yet exactly how it decides, right? If we're going to use these human terms, how this artificial intelligence decides which patterns it's going to pick up, which things it's going to ignore, and which things it's going to put together. Which is why I can type the exact same prompt into AI 5 different times and get 5 similar but different responses, which is another thing that makes it interesting for educators, because unlike plagiarism or direct cutting and pasting off the internet, a teacher can never trace down what AI does. So I could have, say I gave my student, I'm an English teacher, so I'm going to have English examples here. I gave my students an assignment to go in and to write a creative poem about a puppy dog. A lazy student can go to Google, type in poem about puppy dog, cut and paste it. And if I distrust it, I can cut and paste it and I can find it right away. Whereas with AI, I can get in, tell it, create a poem about a puppy dog, and it spits it out. Oh, I don't like that. Write it in the voice of a 10th grader and use these 5 vocabulary words. And there I have it. So as far as how it works, the more specific your prompt, the more specific the output. So it used to be, I designed my rubrics with some very specific guidelines that students had to implement to make the Google search and the cheating more difficult, right? It had to be a specific number of lines. It had to contain specific vocabulary. Maybe it had to have a certain number of figurative elements, similes, and personification, so that it was very, very hard for a student to find something on the internet that matched. The opposite is true with AI. The more specific we make our parameters, the more specific the output that it's going to give. And I can take those same parameters and put it in and get something completely different from what my student got because of this generative capability that it has.
So you mentioned Google. So let's go there for a second. What we've known for so long and how we get our information has been we Google it. And that's right. A verb now. Google's become a verb.
It is.
So it's obviously moved up in the realm. So Googling something has become the standard. And in this case, it's going to be our contrast. And I think that will help us understand generative AI. So, Penny, do you have some thoughts you can share that would help explain to our listeners who may still be sorting through what is generative AI? How is it different, would you say, from a traditional search engine, such as Google?
Google is going to give you a list of specific articles and specific sources, and you can be academically responsible then by using those and citing those in your work. If you go to ChatGPT and it gives you this synthesized version, you have no idea where that information came from. You have no idea if it is even accurate, and you have no way to give academic credit. So AI will tell you, oh, well, you can cite AI like this, and it'll give you a little MLA, APA, Turabian style format. But all that says is that I use ChatGPT. And I had somebody I was talking to just yesterday about this who's been an AI researcher and writer himself, who said it is absolutely never acceptable to use ChatGPT as an authoritative source, right?
Yeah, not exactly peer reviewed.
No, exactly. But if you use others like Copilot, or my personal favorite is Perplexity AI, they will give you all of the sources. They synthesize your content, but then they break it down by sources. You can go back to the original articles. You can verify that everything is accurate. You can then pull information from the original source. So it can be useful as a starting point in research to help you gather your sources, but it's going to do it in a different way than what a normal search engine would do. Another difference is just the whole humanized personality feature. Google is just going to give you your list of sources. Whereas GPT, OpenAI, these are going to have a conversation with you about it. And you can ask them questions and they will respond with answers. And then you can ask follow-up questions and you can go back and forth as often as you need until you've dug down deep enough to get to those answers. They can be pushed into different answers. So I had it look up just the other day, asked a simple question: how many poems are available on sunrises? And AI came back with 9 poems. 9. So I pushed back. Okay, you need to slow down. You need to think a little deeper, dig into all those sources and give me a better number, because I know there are more than that. It comes back with 15. So I do a super quick Google search, come up with hundreds without, it took me like 2 seconds. So then I went back and I said, okay, Mr. Perplexity, I'm very disappointed. I thought you were smarter than Google, and Google gave me hundreds in a few seconds. It came back with this entire paragraph of apology, bending over itself backwards. I'm so sorry. As an AI assistant, I should be smarter than that. Let me do some more research. Then it came back with 535. And we had this whole continuous conversation that did lead to more information on my part, but also just revealed the completely different approach that's going to come from using a chatbot. And it, in many ways, is trained to let you think that it is more human-like. That's the artificial intelligence aspect that kind of sucks us into believing it's almost like another human on the end. You mentioned students being caught up on their phones and talking to AI instead of to each other. It's a real problem. One of the things that AI can do that Google cannot do is it can create characters for you. And these characters now respond to you as if they were your friend. They actually have emotion detectors where they can read the emotion on your face, they can read the emotion on your voice, and respond to you as if they were another human being. I was reading a review by one teenager that said, AI's become my best friend. It's helped me in ways nobody else ever has. I can tell it everything, and it gives me great advice. And in an age where our young people are already so consumed with social media and that little phone they hold in their hand, I'm afraid that this is one way in which responding to AI is going to have a negative impact on them. There are a lot of other differences as well. Again, there's just the basic finding content as opposed to creating content. right? Google search is not going to create anything new, whereas that is the main purpose of this generative AI. And then it gets into a whole nother topic that we can talk to whenever you would like about how teachers can use it in the classroom as well.
Yes. Yeah, let's jump into that because obviously, as with most trends or fads or new things and even technology, education ends up right there in the mix of it. So we've kind of dabbled in it a little bit already in this conversation. I'd love to know your thoughts on that. What are you seeing, or what are your thoughts as to generative AI's impact on education? Maybe already, or maybe what you see is coming.
It is very much a two-sided coin, right? It is already definitely impacting education. And educators who have been interviewed about it are almost 50-50 split on this is terrible, it is horrible, we need to keep it out of our classroom at every cost. It's going to destroy creative thinking, it's going to destroy analytical thinking, it's going to destroy writing capability, it should have no part in the classroom. The other 50% are looking at saying this can have a really good impact. Either the way teachers can use it as a tool to save themselves time and to help with their mostly preparation of classroom materials, or there's even a good 20 to 30% that are saying we need to wholeheartedly bring it into the classroom, as in we need to teach it to our students, show them how to use these tools, even as early as kindergarten. There is actually a school in Texas now that opened earlier this year, K4 through 12th grade, every academic subject is taught 100% by AI. The teachers are merely proctors standing over the students' shoulders or sitting at their own computer and analyzing the data the AI is feeding them from what their students are independently being taught by the computer. That's a little scary to me. It's taking it a lot
parents
too
are
far.
signing up for that.
Exactly. So my personal opinion, right? And I'm not the expert in this. I'm an English teacher, but my personal opinion is somewhere in between those two. I think there is a lot of potential for problems, just like even the cheating that we've already referenced, the homework help that is so accessible to students who simply want to take shortcuts and not really dig in deep and learn and master the material for themselves. But there are also a lot of tools out there that can be helpful to teachers, not to do our work for us, but just like a teacher's edition gives us suggestions of many directions that we can go and extra activities that we can implement, just like a teacher's edition will give us answers to the problems that our students are going to solve. I think GPT can help us in a lot of those areas as teachers whose time is obviously at a premium to dig in and find specific tools then that can help us in the classroom. Percentages are all over the place. A lot of administrators, about 76%, they say, feel like we should take this cautious approach. It's only about 10 to 25 who are willing to 100% throw their teachers in there and have them do it. There are all kinds of privacy concerns. If you're going to do that, technically to use generative AI, if you're between 13 and 18, you need parental consent to even use it. So teachers that are bringing it into the classroom and encourage their students to use it better make sure that they've covered their bases legally so they don't get themselves or their schools in trouble. I think if we're going to teach our children how to use it, it needs to be more based on the ethical side of it. These kids are digital natives. They're born figuring out phones and apps and how to do these things. I don't really think they're going to struggle to use AI any more than any other type of media that's out there. And it's getting easier. It's getting more intuitive. It's getting more prevalent. I think our job as Christian educators, rather, is to teach them how to use it wisely, how to use it ethically, how to use it discerningly, so that they're not just buying into everything that is promoted out there by that.
Yeah, that's great. I want to go into some of those tools. I want to talk about some of those positive things too, but I want to quickly do a quick follow-up. You mentioned cheating. So we've talked about that a few times of students using it to cheat.
Oh, yeah.
Do you see cheating as the major concern, if you want to put it that way, with AI in education. What's your thought on that?
I think if we're looking at outcome, that is the number one concern that teachers have, is how are students going to use it inappropriately? If I look at it from a Christian worldview, I would say the bigger problem is the human heart and the way we can use AI, right? The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. And AI is just another means by which students can cheat. I mean, we're educators. We know that cheating is nothing new. Students have 1,001 ways that they can cheat. So if they are willing to cheat in general, AI is going to be a great tool that they can use to cheat more. But if we can raise their ethical awareness, in my class, I call it their integrity quotient. And I'm constantly telling my students, you guys need to have the highest IQ out there. And it has nothing to do with how smart you are. It has to do with how ethical and honest you are. So if we can keep this before our students, I think we can combat some of that tendency to cheat and use it inappropriately. As Christian educators, we use the Word of God, right? And we should be continually reminding our students that the eyes of the Lord are in every place. Whether you are writing this essay in front of your teacher in a classroom without the tiniest bit of technology, or whether you're at home alone in your bedroom and you've got ChatGPT easily accessible, the Lord is still there and he sees. So you need to do what is good and right in the sight of the Lord because he is with you at all places at all times. So I think because cheating and the deceitfulness of the human heart is such a big thing, the best thing that we can do to combat it is to keep pushing honesty and integrity with our students. And then there are other steps we can take in the classroom as well.
Yeah. Generative AI is yet another opportunity for life lessons. You know, it's not just another tool that we hand them and send them on their way. Just banning it doesn't fix everything, as you've talked about. You know, it's another opportunity to show them how to use a tool in a way that honors the Lord. And with that, we're going to wrap up part 1, but we have still so much more to talk about. Listeners, in part 2, we're going to talk about how schools are responding, as well as tips for using AI appropriately in school. I'm really excited to get into those practical suggestions, and I'm confident you won't want to miss out. We'll see you then. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you were challenged and encouraged as I was. Remember to go to teachereditionpodcast.com to submit questions for upcoming episodes. Of course, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media. Now, it's time to get back to your day, but it's not just any day. Every day in the classroom is your day to impact and inspire through God's power and through His grace working in you. Go do what God has called you to do.